They had weight, texture, breath you could almost feel on your neck through the screen. Before endless CGI armies and universe building, creature features thrived on atmosphere, practical effects, and the slow dread of something lurking just out of sight. Many of those films didn't explode at the box office. Some were dismissed as B-movies. Others were overshadowed by louder franchises. But time has been strangely kind to them. Stripped of hype and marketing cycles, what remains is craft, tension, and creatures built with care. These forgotten monster movies still move, still unsettle, and still prove that imagination beats excess. They remind us that fear doesn't need a shared cinematic universe. It needs shadows, patience, and a monster that feels like it could step off the screen when the lights go down.
Tremors, 1990. Tremors arrived without franchise ambitions, simply telling a tight story about a desert town under siege by subterranean creatures called graboids. Directed by Ron Underwood, the film balances humor and genuine suspense with surprising precision. Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward play reluctant heroes whose chemistry keeps the tone grounded rather than cartoonish. The monsters themselves, realized through practical effects and clever editing, feel tangible and dangerous. By limiting movement to rocky outcrops and rooftops, the film turns open desert into a strategic battleground. Initially a box office disappointment, it found life on home video and cable television, slowly building cult status. Its structure is lean, its creature logic consistent, and its character work sharper than many modern blockbusters. Decades later, it remains endlessly rewatchable and far more carefully constructed than its reputation suggests.
The Mist, 2007. Adapted from Stephen King's novella and directed by Frank Darabont, The Mist traps a group of townspeople inside a supermarket while otherworldly creatures roam outside in dense fog. The monsters range from towering behemoths to grotesque insectoid horrors, many realized through a mix of practical and restrained digital effects. What truly elevates the film is its focus on human collapse. Fear breeds fanaticism, and paranoia becomes as deadly as tentacles scraping against glass. Thomas Jane anchors the film with quiet desperation, while Marcia Gay Harden delivers a chilling portrait of religious extremism. Released in a crowded horror market, it was overshadowed by bigger franchises. Yet its bleak tone and devastating ending continue to spark debate. The Mist holds up because it understands that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are revealed under fluorescent lights.
The Fly, 1986. David Cronenberg's The Fly transforms body horror into tragic romance. Starring Jeff Goldblum as an ambitious scientist whose teleportation experiment goes catastrophically wrong, the film chronicles a slow, grotesque metamorphosis into something inhuman. The practical makeup effects remain astonishing, charting each stage of decay with painful detail. But beneath the gore lies heartbreak. Gina Davis plays a journalist who falls in love with brilliance before witnessing its destruction. Cronenberg treats transformation not as spectacle alone, but as disease, addiction, and inevitable loss. While praised upon release, it is often overshadowed today by flashier creature features. Yet few monster films feel as intimate or emotionally devastating. The Fly endures because its horror is personal. The monster is not invading from outside. It is growing from within, cell by cell. An American Werewolf in London, 1981. Blending dark comedy with visceral horror, An American Werewolf in London remains one of the most impressive werewolf films ever made. Directed by John Landis, the story follows two American backpackers attacked on the Yorkshire moors, leaving one cursed and slowly transforming. The transformation sequence, achieved through groundbreaking practical effects by Rick Baker, still shocks with its painful realism. Bones stretch, skin tears, and the camera refuses to look away. Yet the film balances terror with sharp humor and surreal dream sequences that deepen its unease. Initially seen as tonally strange, it has aged remarkably well. The London setting feels grounded, and the creature effects retain weight and texture absent in many digital successors. It holds up because it understands that horror and absurdity often walk hand in hand.
The Relic, 1997. Before cinematic universes turned every creature into sequel bait, The Relic delivered a single contained nightmare inside Chicago's Field Museum. Directed by Peter Hyams and based on the novel by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, the film traps scientists, police, and gala guests inside dark exhibition halls stalked by a mutated predator called the Cathoga. What makes it hold up is restraint. The creature is revealed in fragments, claws scraping tile, a silhouette behind glass cases, bodies discovered in brutal aftermath. The practical effects give the monster mass and menace that glossy digital models often lack. Penelope Ann Miller and Tom Sizemore ground the chaos with procedural urgency rather than camp. Released during the post-Jurassic Park creature boom, it was overshadowed and quickly forgotten. Yet its museum setting, moody lighting, and unapologetic brutality still feel refreshingly intense and claustrophobic today. The Host, 2006. Long before international cinema became a streaming staple, The Host quietly proved that monster movies could blend satire, family drama, and large-scale creature chaos without losing emotional weight. Directed by Bong Joon-ho, the film begins with a toxic dumping incident that births a river-dwelling beast beneath Seoul's Han River bridges. The attack sequence in broad daylight remains shocking because of its unpredictability and kinetic staging. But what truly holds up is the family at its center, flawed and grieving, scrambling through bureaucratic incompetence to rescue a kidnapped child. The creature design feels tactile and strange rather than over-designed, and the film shifts tones effortlessly between humor and tragedy. Initially marketed as simple creature spectacle, it was far richer than expected. Over time, it gained recognition, yet it still feels criminally under-discussed in mainstream monster conversations.
The Descent, 2005. Claustrophobia becomes the real monster in The Descent. Directed by Neil Marshall, the film follows 6 women exploring an uncharted cave system that collapses behind them, sealing off escape. The first half builds suffocating tension through darkness, tight spaces, and fraying friendships before introducing the humanoid crawlers lurking below ground. Shot with practical effects, stark lighting, and disorienting camera work, the creatures feel feral and immediate rather than fantastical. What makes it endure is emotional authenticity. The grief driving the protagonist bleeds into every decision, making survival deeply personal. The all-female ensemble avoids stereotypes and grounds the horror in believable conflict. Despite strong reviews, it was often reduced to a jump-scare thriller in marketing. In reality, it remains one of the most relentless and psychologically punishing monster films of the 2000s.
The Ritual, 2017. Set against the ancient forests of Sweden, The Ritual transforms grief into something mythic and terrifying. Directed by David Bruckner and adapted from Adam Neville's novel, the film follows 4 friends hiking to honor a deceased companion. What begins as tension between old friends slowly morphs into dread as something vast stalks them through the trees. The creature design, partially hidden, is one of the most original in modern horror, blending folklore with cosmic unease. The forest feels alive, swallowing sound and light. Rather than relying on constant action, the film lingers in guilt and fractured masculinity, letting paranoia erode the group. Released quietly on streaming, it never received a full theatrical spotlight. Yet its atmosphere, creature craftsmanship, and emotional depth make it a modern monster movie that genuinely endures.
The Thing, 1982. John Carpenter's The Thing was initially met with disappointment. Released the same summer as more optimistic science fiction. Set in an Antarctic research station, the film follows a group of men hunted by a shape-shifting alien capable of perfectly imitating its victims. The practical effects by Rob Bottin remain legendary, grotesque transformations unfolding in viscous detail. What truly holds up is paranoia. The monster can be anyone, turning isolation into psychological warfare. Kurt Russell anchors the ensemble with stoic intensity, but no character feels safe. The bleak landscape and minimal score amplify dread rather than spectacle. Over time, critical reassessment transformed it into a masterpiece. The Thing endures because it trusts atmosphere, ambiguity, and practical craftsmanship. Its final moments still leave audiences frozen in uncertainty.
Monsters evolve, technology improves, and franchises expand endlessly. Yet something vital is often lost in that growth. These films endure not because they were the biggest or loudest of their era, but because they understood limitation as strength. Practical effects forced creativity. Smaller budgets demanded tighter scripts. Directors leaned into atmosphere rather than excess. Over time, what was once dismissed as modest or strange has proven durable. The creatures still feel threatening. The tension still builds patiently. The endings still linger. Revisiting these forgotten monster movies reveals how carefully they were constructed and how confidently they embraced fear without apology. They remind us that spectacle fades, but mood survives. When the lights dim and silence settles, these monsters still breathe in the dark, waiting patiently to be rediscovered by audiences ready to feel afraid again.